Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us again on a good day of the week. I like to think this is a good day of the week because we're nearly there. We're nearly into Friday. What about you, Ben?
Yeah. Thursday is as far as I'm concerned, is pre-Friday.
Yeah.
It's as near as Friday as it's going to get without it being Friday.
Exactly that. Now you may have noticed that my good friend and normal co-host Steven is not with us today. You may have seen from the quick graphic that I conjured up very quickly to announce this show that he's got COVID. Hence the thermometer to his mouth and the COVID spores flying everywhere on the graphic. But he is watching. He's promised me that he's sitting at home watching. So we probably will get comments from him as come through. And in fact, Steven will be as well trying to tag other people into the show as we go through the show as well. So that's a wonderful thing. So get better soon, Steven. And I won't ask you how you got COVID, although I'm a little bit concerned because the last time I saw you, you were at the Health and Wellbeing show last week, which is where you came live from. And it'd be a little bit ironic if you actually caught COVID from a Health and Wellbeing event.
Yeah, that's one event you don't want to be a super spreader event, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. No. Which show did you go to last year? So yeah, Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, we've just been discussing before coming on there that you're only just down the road from me. I'm in Somerset, and you're in the wonderful part of Devon.
Yes, so we moved down to Devon about 3 years ago, and I've been doing my consultancy since then. Before then, I was a head of a multi-site complex and medical pupil referral unit, which is too long to fit on a lanyard badge. But actually, what that was looking after with a team of brilliant and dedicated people, looking after young people who found going into mainstream school really, really difficult. And so we looked after them in terms of their academic and social and health needs. And
what sort of ages were they?
So they could be from 0 to 16.
Right.
But the majority were between 11 and 16. But because there was a education going through the hospital as well, that might very much depend on who was on the ward round.
Right.
So yes, never bored.
No. What sort of things what sort of issues were those youngsters having that kept them from education, if you don't mind asking?
So the broad area we'd say as a legacy of unmet need. So whether that is around some developmental delay, whether that is around particular social issues that meant that they missed school, whether that is around undiagnosed ADHD, and that might present as aggression or frustration. So a number of different ways in which schools would say, well, we can't meet need, and some would be permanently excluded, some would be referred. There are also young people with life-limiting conditions, such as cancer, leukemia, and so on, and also young people that had anxiety to the extent where they weren't able to access school, and they weren't able to get on the bus, for example, to access school. So a whole range of, and that was all pre-pandemic. So all of those levels were high, and resources were well stretched even before the pandemic.
Well, I can certainly attest that help is needed in that area, and I'll come back and talk to you about that in a minute. Just say hi to a few people today. Thanks for joining us, Susan, all the way from Ontario. Chris, you will be fine. Just because Stephen brought you a coffee at the event last week, I'm sure. In fact, he said he wasn't affected then, so there we go. I love this one comment from Mike, who's watching. Get better soon, Stephen. Graham's concern for you is unrivaled in the What do you mean? I'm here doing the work. He's there at home with his, slippers on.
I thought that other comment as well about someone testing themselves. I thought actually it said I needed to pinch myself because he bought me a coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, actually, I need to test myself. Okay.
That true, probably, yeah. No, that's true. I'm surprised I didn't buy you McDonald's. Actually, Stephen, were you at McDonald's? That's a good point, because I know how much you like a little cheeky McDonald's in the middle of the day. Maybe that's where you picked it up. Who knows? The thing is that it's so easy to pick up COVID, and who knows who you get it from. Anxiety is suffered by so many. It is. We had a special parents evening this week, my wife and I, at school for our youngest, who's 6 at the moment, but he's at the point where he's needing constant attention from one person, and obviously the school are needing to seek funding for that. But it's a really long process to try and get that in place. How many? I mean, unfortunately, in a way, we're fortunate in that we can give him time at home, etc., and we are working with the school. How many youngsters just fall by the wayside without or don't actually get the help that they need?
So, I mean, it's always been there in terms of how do we enable young people to get access to school and services, and how do we bring in the additional need to make that happen? Because if we don't, then essentially what we're doing is we're just providing social exclusion, which means that, okay, those people that are this okay can access and come in, and those people that are less than okay find it difficult. Well, you're just going to have to manage or do online learning or not be able to come into school. And so I think we're learning more and more about how this manifests. So, for example, it may be that someone finds it difficult to come in. It may be that someone's fine, and then there's a massive outburst at school, which may mean that they're excluded, either a suspension or permanent exclusion. But it's, for a lot of children, school is a very, very big ask, because I have to get the uniform on, to get my transport, I have to go to the right rooms at the right times, I have to be in busy corridors, I have to be surrounded by, particularly in secondary school, I have to be surrounded by, let's say, 700 to 1,000 other young people, all moving at the same time. And so quite often, in answer to your question, we only find out afterwards because some of the signs are so hidden, because the child really wants to keep it together and stay at school until they can't. But it's there's quite a lot of different bits of research around it, but because we're still in it, it's quite difficult to ascertain the difference and the trends. We just know that we keep finding young people that are finding it difficult.
Mike says, my daughter suffered with mental health issues whilst at school. None of the teachers had any professional mental health training. I think schools need more resources. I mean, that's something I kind of feel as well, which is that I understand the need for the specialist support at the point where something's recognised and they know that they need to support. But do we just need more overall training, not only in schools actually, but in organisations, full stop, in terms of recognising these things? So I don't necessarily need to be an expert. I don't necessarily need to do the bit where I actually put into place policies, procedures, the right mechanisms for someone, but at least I may have more of an understanding and an empathy and an idea that this might be this, rather than just bad behaviour or something going wrong.
So there's a number of different levels. So the government's rolled out mental health lead training in school, and so there are people in school who can train up for that role. In terms of what's available for staff, so something that I do that I've rolled out to schools, but also charities and associations, because actually there's a lot of people that are on the front line where they're having first encounters with people who are experiencing mental health distress. So I roll out mental health first aid, which is done by Mental Health First Aid England, but also suicide first aid as well.
Oh,
and
right.
and essentially what that is it's giving people the skills and confidence to have that first encounter. Without so when people come into the training, a lot of them are really quite apprehensive because they don't want to say and do the wrong thing that they imagine will make the situation worse. So one of the major parts of that training is actually how do we listen? How do we listen? How do we sit with the uncomfortable things that someone might be saying to us, but they might be saying that to us for the first time. So that's not therapy. None of the people on the course are then qualified as therapists. But actually, as human beings, when we are really good at listening, and when we are really good at moving ourselves and our own agenda to the side, we are making a space that's therapeutic because someone feels safe there, and someone feels they can say what they need to say and maybe what they've said for the first time. For schools, really tricky. So, for example, where is the space in the school day to do that? I volunteer in a local school, and I essentially volunteer to listen, and that's what I do. So for a day, sort of morning week, I sit and I listen to young people, and I'm not fixing, I'm not counselling, I'm not doing therapy, but actually there's the space to go blah, blah, blah. And of course, if there's safeguarding things that disclose, that follows a particular system, but quite often they just want the space to talk, and that's what's provided, and then they are able to get on with the school day. I do feel really I feel for the pressure that teachers are under, because they have these young people around them, whether in the primary or secondary setting, but their performance management, what they're if you like judged on in terms of whether they are doing their job well, is about standards and progress. It's what they're judged on is not about how inclusive they're being, or whether they reached out as a tutor to home to find out about somebody, whether they took time to get to know someone's favorite band, favorite football team, and so on. All those little links and connections and hooks that basically mean that people feel that they belong.
Yeah. There's some great points being made as well. Susan, who's obviously from Canada, parents, sadly, you need to advocate for your children. The parent must be active in the search of help through the teacher, principal, and the board. And it is the same here. You do need to actively take part in pushing that. Steven raises the issue. Do we have any sort of idea how much impact COVID has on school inclusion?
So, excuse me. That's Stanley the dog who's imagining that there's a delivery.
Yeah, mine does exactly the same. That's why he's downstairs at the moment.
Yeah, excuse me. Sorry about that. He'll come scratching back on the door in a minute. In terms of the impact that COVID has had, it's really tricky to say because we're still in there. So we've had, if this is our timeline, we've had little snapshots through as to what are the amounts of children that are accessing online education. How about those people that are engaging? So what is happening in those things? And those are self-reported by schools. We have referral rates from people to young people's services and to adult services in terms of their mental health. And so we're getting all these snapshots. I mean, we were stretched before. We were stretched before. So what's happening now is that what was dealt with through the ingenuity of the health sector, the social care sector, and the education sector, that ingenuity and that stretch doesn't work anymore. It's an immovable thing in front of us that we have to address differently, and so on. And there has been investment in the health service and so on. But I know that for many parents, and some of the comments on there, it's just an incredibly long process, and we're worried about our children. So one of my roles is for advocacy, and one of my main roles of advocacy is to keep the purpose of the child front and center when parents and carers are so exhausted that they don't feel they can do it anymore. So that's really key. I do apologise for standing.
No, it's fine.
Especially if there's any people that don't like dogs. So.
Well, no, they're all saying they love the dogs. They love the dogs.
Thank you.
Stephen agrees. They're quite used to it because my little Dutch hound, he's a mini Dutch hound trooper, quite often does exactly the same. It doesn't have to be a proper postman at the door. It can just be a leaf that has landed. And there they go. They just have to see something in the corner of their eye, and they're there.
He hates those leaves.
But a couple of things you say there. One, I totally get it in terms of the resource, because even when we were sat in that special meeting earlier this week, towards the end of it, the Senko at the school said that I've got to go now because I've got to cover staff that aren't here.
Yeah.
Because that is the problem at the moment. COVID just immediately takes staff out.
Yeah.
And suddenly, everybody has to shift position and cover. So it's schools have only got a finite resource. But the other thing is,
especially if that teacher that's swapped out is the one that you think gets you, so if it's, Mr. and Mrs. Green, they get me, but they're not here, then instantly my anxiety is going up through the roof.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. I mean, that's when our little one really kicked off and actually got excluded from school.
Yeah.
I mean, excluded from school at age 6, but one day, because his main support worker that he had formed a relationship with and was dealing with on a one-to-one basis had to be moved.
Yeah.
And it's suddenly so difficult for them. But the other thing, coming back to what you were saying about the mental health first aid, I did my mental health first aid training. And the reason I did it was because I was working in the field of doing effectively ergonomic assessments. But while I was doing that, I had a real burden on me that there's so many people in that industry that all they really know about is ergonomics. But of course, what you're doing when you go in is you're seeing people. You may be the first person that anybody sees, right? So there was a year where I took a lot out of that year to retrain as well. I did my mental health first aid training, but I also did all of my qualifications in specific learning difficulties, for example. So I had a better understanding there, because for me, it seems I'd really love to encourage more people in those positions where you've got an entry point into helping somebody to do more training and have a better understanding, as you say, not so that you can then sit there in the middle of an ergonomics assessment and offer counselling, but just so you can go, you know what, I'm picking up on things here because I've had some training and I can see what's happening. And you know a bit more about how to listen, and you know a bit more about how to react to that because you feel more confident in reacting to that. And then you can actually signpost, and then you can actually say, look, I believe there's more going on here than just you needing an extra mouse on your desk.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful? Do you think it would be helpful if now what I do as part of this report is refer you to somebody else to come in and do an assessment in that area and potentially talk to you about that? And you know what? The majority of the time, the answer will be yes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, for me, it was crucial because I think unless we start doing that and doing that through all of these systems, all we do is we're putting a plaster on a wound, but we're not actually ever getting to the real problem.
Yeah.
Do you agree? I mean, it's, you know, for me, why is somebody experiencing, you know, we call this wow ergonomics, but why is somebody experiencing, you know, musculoskeletal disorder? Maybe it's just their posture, right? But when somebody starts to present with multiple physical conditions, so often when you start to unpick it, there's an underlying anxiety issue, mental health issue, or you know, maybe there's and that may be driven out of, as I say, a learning difficulty as well. It might be, you know, they say, well, actually, you know, I just can't I'm here late every night, you know, and I'm here late every night because I just can't deal with the way that all these tasks keep coming at me, or the amount of work that, you know. But when you start looking at it, it suddenly becomes obvious. It's like, well, hang on a minute, you may, you know, I can see you may be dyslexic, and it might be that the reason you can't cope is that everybody's giving you written information, right? And you can't cope with it in that format. What's it like if someone says to you, you know, here's a set of tasks, and they leave it for you as voice notes? Oh yeah, that's so much easier, right? So then you start unpicking it and go, okay, so if management did this instead of this, and your burden started lifting from there, then you know, your mental attitude in that situation lifts as well, and then your physical situation, and put all of those things together, suddenly you've got a solution. But if you literally just come and go, well, how about we give you a mouse?
Yeah. Or even worse, we're going to keep things the same at work, but we're going to have a well-being day because that will sort you out. You know, those. So, would a blank checkbook resolve these issues, or does it go beyond that?
In other words, is this a financial issue? Is it a situation where, you know, money can buy us the answer here, or is it more than that?
No, I mean, I think you know, I think that so if we take a finite resource like time, you can't create more time. You can't, you know, it can't throw more time at a situation, but you can steward the time that you've got. And I think that we steward things in relation to the values and priorities that we have. So you know, quite often the people that feel they're ground down at work, that is because the sense of there's only one way to be productive, and this is it, this is our way, is the value and priority that's you know, that's put forward. Whereas if, like you say, there's reasonable adjustment, multiple ways of recording, I mean, two things happen. One is that their personal anxiety and, you know, what we might call cognitive load reduces, because they're not using huge parts of their brain to fit in to something that's really not suited to their way of processing information. And the second thing that happens is you suddenly open up the full capacity of an amazing human being in your organization. But that's cost nothing apart from considering other options. And that's what I say about the training as well. The training, in essence, is permission to be better human beings. That's what it is. You know, if I'm a better listener, I'm a better human being. If I'm able to sit in a space with somebody and not project my own rubbish on somebody that's trying to come out with theirs, I'm a better human being. You know, so you know, really look at the values and priorities of an organization, and it doesn't take a huge amount of tweaks and shifts and vulnerability from the top to actually transform an organization to being more well-being friendly.
No, it doesn't. Well, you say that, but it is actually hard. I think it's hard because, you know, because the trouble is where people look in terms of culture transformation is quite often in the wrong place.
And
I think one of the problems as well is it's too often looking at the bottom line in terms of pounds, shillings, and pence.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, in the wrong space and trying to bring it all forward, right? So you get a situation where someone goes, right, yeah, we really care for the health and well-being of our people within this organization. And the reason, and we understand that now. I mean, there's some fundamentals now that where people are beginning to get it. So yeah, we understand that, and we want to make that work. But we've only got a finite cost to put on that now. Therefore, let's go into these procedures or these policies and procedures, but we must have them front loaded so that they're easily measurable in terms of time and resource, so that we get as good an outcome as we can. And outside of that becomes really difficult. But the trouble is, and I've seen that for myself, is I've been told off before now.
It's hard to believe. I can't believe that.
Yeah, for going to do a workplace assessment for someone, and there I am. I go in and I'm working on behalf of an organisation, and I've been set a task. I've been set a task of going in, doing this particular thing, and doing it within a particular time, right? But I walk into a building, and there in front of me is someone that has got problems with their wrist. So the viewpoint goes, it's a wrist issue, and therefore it's an ergonomic assessment, and therefore 30 minutes is fine. Right? That's great. What nobody knows is that this person's got PTSD.
Yeah.
Right. And they've never talked to anybody ever about it. Now, what do you do in that situation? Do you go, right, really sorry, I hear what you're trying to say to me about your PTSD, but I'm here to do a risk assessment on you about your wrist. So if you could shut up, please, and just tell me about your wrist, that would be great. I'm going to be here half an hour. I'm going to write the report, and off I go.
Yeah.
Jobs are good. Or because you've managed to be the person that you are, and you've managed to get that person to open up, you spend 4 hours there, and you get but afterwards that person has begun to feel they're now on a journey of actually being able to start to deal with this and talk to someone about this at work. Now, the trouble is, the cost of that is shifted, right? And suddenly the cost of that initial assessment and everything else really should be greater. The fact is, I always just used to do it for the same price. But the point is, no one liked that, because they should be charging more, right? But ultimately, if we did more of that, if it was a more fluid, open process at the beginning, we'd actually save so much money further down the line.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to say, we're paying for it now. We're paying for the people that. There's a phrase that I really like, which is do the hard stuff while it's still easy. And actually, because we don't, either due to resource or structures or whatever it might be, people would tip into crisis, and then we need a crisis response. It's quite a famous airline pilot saying, which is, if you think safety is expensive, try having an accident. And it's so. But within that as well is the sense of, how much not doing it can we get away with before we have to do it?
Yeah,
but that's not care.
No.
That's not care. That's resource led. That's not care.
Yeah, and isn't that the problem, that actually what we see from a lot of businesses, that there are exceptions, but what we see from a lot of businesses is the resource around actual health and well-being isn't a proper change of culture, because a proper change of culture would actually be would allow a more fluid approach, because it actually would want to remove those obstacles to anybody's health and well-being properly being supported, but it is actually it's a procedural thing to tick the box and say, yes, we cover this area. We are health and wellbeing led, and we do it in this way.
Yeah,
where we can tick all of the boxes off and say, look at us as a business. We've got these policies and procedures in place. But that's not actually a cultural change, because proper cultural change is where you actually decide, no, we want this to actually be at the root of our organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it, most organizations still really have a hangover from the time and motion studies of like 40s and 50s, and if it's almost like an irrefutable truth that time is money, but so that is up there in people's regard, and there's lots of books and writing research on it, but actually, as we find out about what makes human beings tick, that is lagging behind in terms of, because our organizations are full of human beings. And so I have conversations with people that are in charge of, let's say, 1,000 employees, and we go through the research and we go through the science, and I still might get back, oh, Ben, yeah, it's all a bit too touchy-feely for me. Actually, it's not. No, it's actual science. It's this is actual research about how human beings respond best, how you're going to get the best out of your personnel.
Yeah,
it's not touchy-feely. I'm not going around asking people to, do incense and hug trees. This is, you can do that. It's fine, but it's these are practical things that help us be better human beings.
Yeah, I think there's a lot for organisations to learn at both ends of the spectrum, both in terms of the, and I think it's difficult. I think it's really difficult for them. I mean, so many of our processes, up until now, not just on the support process side of things. Just think about it in terms of sales and customer service, etc. as well. It's been so, so ingrained into company culture, things like cold calling and then customer service. We've seen that with some of the banks, for example, that whole thing about PPI and whatever. How many banks have had real issues in terms of their staff who, they've had the people that sold PPI then actually deal with the customer complaints from PPI afterwards, and then and these people were having nervous breakdowns and real mental health issues. Of course, you ask someone to sell something to someone 1 minute and then tell them that's evil the next minute, and then they've got to be the person dealing with the support. It's just awful, really. But all of those things they're now trying to come to terms with. We're on a platform. One of the platforms we're broadcasting to at the moment is LinkedIn. The amount of people that are struggling with that in terms of this thing called social selling. I've got to talk about me. But hang on a minute. Why can't I just talk about a product or a service and then people just buy it? No, because people want to actually know a little bit about you, because they want to actually have proper investment in people. Oh my goodness, I don't know whether I can do that. In fact, I'm not going to let my people be people on LinkedIn. I'm just going to have them be robots and talk about this. It's just such a different world we live in now. Yeah, and I think organisations are really struggling with the whole of that. It's the ones where they really grasp the nettle. Yeah. And they've actually gone, do you know what? It's all about purpose. Yeah. It's completely about purpose. Let's have a proper purpose. What are we doing to change the world? Forget the product, forget the service, forget all of that, because that will come afterwards. What is it we want to do as a company to help make a difference.
Yeah.
Those ones where that is truly at the forefront, then everything else follows into line afterwards, because you suddenly go, right, it's fine to do things a different way.
Yeah.
It's
And
absolutely fine.
I think so. There's a phrase that one of my friends, Richard Carpenter, uses, which is, "Don't ask your children what they want to do in life. Ask them what problem they want to solve." And that being that being your main careers question is, okay, what is it that you want to solve? And then you'll find your passion and your niche. And it's the same for us adults as well.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't be asking children that, though. What we should be doing is asking boards of directors that. And the trouble is, when you sit some of them down and actually start to ask them that, they all go, it's actually a fascinating. I know I've been there. It's actually a fascinating experience to get a group of heads of a company into a room and actually ask them the question: what is it that this company is about? What is the purpose of this company? And people will go, well, we sell. No, not what you sell. What's it about?
Yeah.
Making money. Well, that's not going to cut it. You know, because every company is about making money.
Yes.
You wouldn't be in business unless it was making money. But what are you actually here to do? And that's the thing. A lot of businesses haven't got a purpose.
Yeah.
It's quite a scary thought, that. It
And,
really is.
And we think that because of the pay of somebody, or because we're there in the hierarchy, that they're going to know that. But I've been in meetings where I quickly calculated the 2-hour salary of everybody in the room, and it's easily 100K for 2 hours of people's time in there, and then I'm walking out of that meeting going, I'm not sure what we did. I'm not sure why we had that meeting. I'm not sure. I was there to learn, to get some information from particular people, but in terms of the difference it made and the purpose that was defined and pursued, could have been anything. Could have been a round of golf.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for coming in and talking with me today. What's before you go, what's the starting point for all of us then? What's the key thing that we could all do as an organization, etc., if people are watching, that would actually make a good starting point?
So I think there are some great resources that Mental Health First Aid England does. And so just a few days ago, they did a Bring Your Whole Self to Work day. And I think, and that initiative is really interesting in terms of, actually, this is all of me. So I might be carer of an elderly parent. I might not have any children, but I've got 5 cats. So this is all of me. And starting to look at ways in which all of the people that work for you, all their aspects of their lives, can be appreciated and logged in, and so systems aren't penalising those families or those that are single, and so on. So just that appreciation that someone has a whole life, and to have that whole life is not career limiting, I think is a really good starting point.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I say, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thanks for your wisdom and understanding on the subject today, sir.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and I hope that Stephen gets better soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching. If you're listening to this on Spotify, hope you've enjoyed it. Do share it amongst your friends. Of course, if you haven't already discovered the Wow Ergonomics website, it's there and available for everyone to find. www.wowergonomics.com. There's some good example photos as well of people who have won kit from back at Elkhuysen on there over the last few weeks. I've updated it with some photos so people can see what a difference things can make to your workspace at home. We'll be back next week, hopefully with Steven as he's recovered from his COVID. But until then, thanks very much for watching. Thanks from me, and thanks from my guest, Ben. Bye for now.